Hello and welcome to Fifi and the In-Between, the channel for original short stories of fantasy to occupy your mind and inspire your deepest self. This is the story, A Song for the Unseen. Before we begin, I have a secret to share. Every story has a rhythm. If you rush it, you will look foolish. If you fear it, you will stop hearing its pulse. Life is a story, and each life has its own rhythm. Together, our lives create an opus. I did not write this story. I was given it. In a book, old and in bad repair. That is how stories persist. By being given away to curious readers. This tale came from a land that resembled Germany in the way that a dream resembles a map. Forests with murky shadows, villagers whispering behind stone walls, ravens rattling softly, not because they are calm, but because they are afraid of being shot. In this wooded land, alive with ancient spirits, lived a singer who sang tales, a child who stood out and could not be unseen. And there lived a girl who died, but did not entirely leave. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not always great at following the rhythm. I'm rushing the story. Right. Back to the young singer. His name was Ari Dagobert. Some said he was born singing. Others said he learned it from bells that rang during funerals and births. Ari himself never denied this. He knew better than to correct a story once it was believed. Before the quiet serpentine battle, he sang in alleyways warmed by candles and windows. He could be vain, admiring himself in the window panes. He liked feathered hats and dainty soft shoes and buttons made from bones. Men of status applauded politely. Ladies whispered questions to each other. The dirt roads twisted themselves around the village, a loose grip, able to tighten at will. He sang the old songs everyone pretended not to remember anymore. The one about the girl who spins straw into silk. The one about the bride who walks through a burning forest to save her love. The one about the child who outpaces hunger by eating her own shoes. The battle swept through the countryside, softly like a wind in the night. There was an absence of trumpets, drums, and fifes. Instead, it announced itself with silence, heavy and oppressive. It was known by the way the trees stopped growing and they dropped their sickly leaves. Children noticed fathers who came home from the fields carrying anger like a second-hand coat they could not remove. The bars were closed and stages were torn down. Humming was a crime punishable by lifelong indentured servitude. So, Ari sang in abandoned places, ruined mills, sour creek beds that poisoned the livestock, chapels with smashed statues of saints. He sang because stopping would mean agreeing with the silent force, promising a cold and barren future. One bird fell softly, 2 cattle moaned, 3 straw arms burned, but the bride, she just kept on walking. He sang songs like that. In a nearby village, stitched together with crooked beams and stubborn hope, lived a boy named Sammy Hastings. He learned invisibility early. Earlier than reading, earlier than running even. He learned how to stand in such a way that even the birds would not notice him. He never spoke. He only listened. Sammy had an older sister. Her name was Annie. Annie was terrified of being taken seriously. Annie laughed like she had an inside joke with God about the fate of humanity. And when the stew burned, she laughed. When the roof leaked, she laughed. When their father's voice began to rumble with impatience, she laughed. Not because she didn't care, but because laughter, she thought, could trip up cruelty just long enough for mercy to slip past. And sometimes it worked. Annie told jokes to the chickens. She imagined their clucks were chuckles. She bowed after her neighbors scolded her for doing wrong. She thanked objects when they failed her. She was very polite to the universe. But the universe did not return the favor. She died in the 3rd winter of the battle, when the cold entered her lungs, and she stopped laughing. There was no marker for her grave. The townspeople thought it better if everyone just forgot her. But Annie did not go as quietly as they hoped. Her humor lingered, like a warm coal in a dying fire. Doors creaked without moving, ravens spoke her name in the darkness, and Sammy could hear familiar snorts of amusement whenever he tripped or stubbed his toe. One day, in the springtime, Sammy took an unfamiliar path towards the fields where his father worked. Flooding had cut him off from the well-worn road. It was here that he heard Ari singing. Ari's face was hanging over the Hexenbrunnen, the witch's well. Children were warned not to look into it, lest it eat their eyes. Ari sang down into its stone mouth, his voice rising and falling like the wind. His singing was slow, deliberate, as if each note were a prayer to a savior. Or something like that. I'm probably not doing him any justice. Sammy couldn't help but laugh. Who puts their head in a witch's well? 'Twas insanity. He caught the laugh in his throat, startled by his own sound. Laughter was dangerous now. Anyone might snitch on him, even this boy with the illegal voice. Ari froze, listened. There was nothing but the ravens in the distance, making mischief and collecting small bits and baubles to trade. Ari turned casually, pretending he was alone. Nothing. Well, it must have been a wildcat warning off a foe, or a branch falling on a startled rabbit. Sammy's invisibility had saved him from capture before. This time was no different. Yet, both Ari and Sammy felt trapped, unable to leave the well, afraid of being noticed. They listened with the small hairs on their arms, the way people do when the stairs creak in the night, but no one's home. Ari smelled bread, but there wasn't an oven for miles. Soldiers, he thought. They lose their way easily in the forest. They do not know to listen to the rivers or to the winds. But they are not silent. They are not good spies. A ghost child, perhaps. He turned to leave, aware that he was being followed. Ari had met Sammy once before, at the Hastings house, when Annie was still alive. Ari had heard that they had an unusual private chapel, where the sound would echo off the walls, but would never be heard outside the building. He pretended to be a historian's apprentice, interested in forgotten construction methods. Surprisingly, Sammy's father let Ari in and showed him the chapel. Once inside and alone, Ari stomped his foot down. The open, white room answered. He clapped. The sound climbed all the way up to the ceiling. Sammy was there, watching Ari explore the sounds. And Ari knew Sammy was there by the way the pure sound collapsed in one child-sized corner. As Ari walked away from the witch's well, he recalled the strange boy barely noticeable. The Hastings house was far from the well, but boys too young to fight were mostly left to their own devices. Ari froze again, listening, feeling a presence. He wasn't sure if he should speak. And becoming bored, he kept walking. Little did either of them know that they had another member in their party, the essence of Annie. She arrived as interruptions. A sudden wind, foul-smelling, loose rocks under their feet, pollen in the wind tempting Sammy to sneeze. Sammy had a feeling that this was his sister's work. He was losing focus and making small mistakes the longer they walked. That night, as Ari settled down, wrapping himself in a warm wool blanket, leaning against a tree, Sammy heard his father's angry footsteps coming along the path from the direction of the field. He had been working late, and Sammy had never brought his lunch to him. Sammy knew it was his father by the swear-filled muttering and the uneven sound of a slight lip. Mr. Hastings saw Ari. Feathered hat sticking out, flaunting itself, soft shoes peeking out from the bottom of the wool blanket. He hated the boy. His singing would cause them all to be put to death. Sammy's father decided it was time. He raised his gun and pointed it directly at Ari, peacefully sleeping, unaware of the man's dark approach. Suddenly, 3 knocks on the trunk where Ari dreamed. The tree shook. Ari woke with a start, and looking at the gun, breathed in. Not wildly, precisely. He knew this man, and he knew that this man kept a soundproof chapel immaculately cleaned. Ari hoped that underneath the hateful glare, deeper down, was a love for song. He opened his mouth and began singing the tale of a girl who laughed at wolves, a tale of a boy who learned to vanish, a tale of a man who mistook anger for power. As Ari sang, Sammy made himself visible, standing between Ari and his father. The father slid to his knees, terrified, tears welling in his eyes, and he dropped his gun to the ground. They heard him choking on his own sobs. His heart broke. His heart broke hearing his part in the tale. He knew the tale was true, and his grief for his daughter spilled from him in painful gasps. Ari knew Sammy had protected him. But when the pain wore off, Mr. Hastings may have less patience than before. Ari offered his soft hand to Sammy, who for once was glad to be seen. Annie laughed. What dumb children and a ridiculous father. They escaped to an old theater in the forest that had not yet been swallowed up as it sat alone and long abandoned. They made it their own safe haven, away from the fear and the silence. As the days passed, Sammy dared to discover his voice. His speaking voice was quiet, and it was also unsure of itself. But Ari loved to hear him speak. Sammy was so careful about each word that it was like poetry. Free to be himself, Ari's singing grew into something powerful and brave. Sammy would fall asleep at night, listening to Ari's song, feeling protected by a voice so breathtaking. It could stop a father's anger right in its tracks. Annie came and went, playing all kinds of tricks on them, knocking over pots when they started feeling hopeless, dropping acorns on the roof when they were leaning in towards each other, opening windows to wake them from very comfortable dreams. Eventually, the silent battle faded away. It didn't flee like an army in retreat, but slowly people stopped believing in its power, and without fear, it couldn't control anyone. One day, Ari heard voices approaching the theater, hacking away at the underbrush. It was Sammy's father, looking for the son that had run away from him. Ari's eyes swelled as he saw Sammy's father cry out with joy as he saw his son. He grabbed Sammy and held him so close that all of their fears faded away. His father could see him, and it was okay, better than okay. The love that poured out of his father's gaze was like a waterfall washing him clean. Ari and Sammy returned to the village, now young men, and wondered what was left of who they had been before. The walls, built to keep the beasts of the forest out, had slowly toppled. The villagers met and decided that the stones would be better used to build a great hall for people to gather and remember themselves and their stories. Ari filled the hall on holidays, singing the songs handed down from countless generations. Sammy listened and hummed along. Ani kept up with her tricks, forever reminding her brother that she still exists. Now, it's been so long that the hall is a museum, rented out for weddings and performances, and the villagers are nothing but a legend, part reality, part dream, part wishful thinking. But it is said, if you listen closely, even now, you can hear laughter on the wind and the ravens singing songs long forgotten, reminding us not to be afraid.